back in Studio A with my guest this morning, as I mentioned, from San Juan Regional Medical Center. Reverend Linda Stetter is back with us this morning. She is a regular guest here on KSJE. Welcome back.
Thank you, Scott. It's always good to come and talk about the exciting things that are happening at San Juan Regional.
Thank you for doing that. We appreciate that very much. Also, Desiree Kenneth is here this morning, and she is part of the What Matters to You program. Desiree, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in. It's great to have you here. And Reverend Stetter, let me start with you a little bit about this whole idea and concept of patient care and this What Matters to You program. And as we were talking before we came on the air this morning, this also includes some of the employees, or all of the employees at the hospital are also a big partner in this effort, correct?
Correct, yes. So What Matters to You is not just a national program, it's an international program. And it helps us understand our patients so that we can personalize their care and help them with what matters to them more than anything else, and to ask that question and to be intentional about helping them with what matters to them. Because if we treat them as a whole person, they're going to heal better and be happier and go home and be back to their normal life, which is what we want. We want them to be as well as they can and get back to their pleasure in life.
Got it. Very good. But if I've got a broken ankle, isn't that like everybody else's broken ankle? Can't you just treat me the same as every other broken ankle patient?
Well, that's kind of the old perception of healthcare, where you come in and you're just kind of a patient number and they put you on the assembly line of care and they fix you physically and they do a really great job of that, and then you go home. But what matters to me when I have a broken ankle might not be the same thing that matters to you. I might have an elderly mother at home who's now alone, and what's going to matter to me is that I get out of the hospital as soon as I can with home services. What might matter to you is that you'll just be well enough to play softball again 6 weeks from now. So it really varies a lot. And it varies to the families too, because families come with the patients and they have a lot of anxieties and a lot of questions. So it's a much bigger issue than just treating the physical person.
Right, and treating each patient as an individual is what
Absolutely.
I hear you saying. And thank you for giving my ankle so much credit that it could play softball or baseball.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sure you can.
No, I don't think so. But anyway, the ankles can maybe. The heart may be willing. But anyways, thank you for that. Desiree, I want to turn to you a little bit about this program as well, because as Reverend Stetter was saying, this is pitched to every employee at the hospital, from the doctors and the nurses and the folks that do have kind of primary interactions with patients, but also I think just the support workers and maybe janitorial and sanitation and all the food service, all of the workers at the hospital, correct? They're all part of this program initiative?
Yes, absolutely. So the What Matters to You ideal around it is that you do not have to be a patient to answer that question or to initiate the conversation with. So what matters to you is something that you can integrate within the departments and with each caregiver we have at our hospital. I am a non-clinical worker, and when I was on the floor as a patient experience representative, I noticed what mattered to our housekeepers is that they had linen to clean the rooms and to flip the rooms. I noticed that what matters to our nurses' aides whenever they're in the room is helping pick up a little bit of trash we see around the room when we check in on our patients. Whenever we ask each other what matters to you, it offers that connection and it offers an open-ended answer to the question. It's not something you can say yes or no to. It's something that you really got to think about and start that conversation with each other.
Got you. And that's, of course, also what you're asking the patients, too, as Reverend Stetter was saying. But in addition, you have the workers who are being asked that question, and someone is hopefully listening to the answer.
Oh, absolutely.
Of that question.
Yeah. So when it comes to our patients, when we ask that question, it's not always what matters to you. A lot of our caregivers phrase it uniquely depending on the situation they're in. I have heard a nurse ask a patient at one point saying, when you're discharged, what's most important to you? Is it getting your valuables put together, or is there something outlined that we haven't spoke about, and whether that's transportation to their follow-up appointments, or if it's having enough bandages, sending them home with that way they can take care of themselves.
Really important. And some things that I guess maybe someone like myself wouldn't think about, right? If
Absolutely.
just get me out of the hospital, I just want to go home. But then, what else? If I can't get back to my follow-up appointment, or bandages, as you said, or there could be a lot of other things that these individuals are concerned about, and that's what you're trying to find out.
Yes.
And a much better question to ask than just a yes or no. Everything okay? Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
are you ready
Off
to go home?
Yeah, and then off you go. So that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that. And Reverend Stetter, this program, as you mentioned, is international. Many hospitals have adopted it. I think San Juan Regional is the only hospital in New Mexico. Is that what we were talking about this morning?
Yes, as far as we know, we're the only hospital in New Mexico who has adopted this and gone full force. It's taken about a year and a half to put it together to get where we are today. And one of the reasons we're talking about it today is we're celebrating some success today. June is the International What Matters to You Celebration Month. And so we're marking a lot of success that will be reflected in our patient quality scores, and a lot of success that is marked when patients come back to us with a similar or different ailment saying, oh, my care here was so good last time, I'm really coming back here, I'm not going somewhere else. So we're celebrating all over the house with contests and food and all kinds of things. Desiree can tell you a little bit more about that celebration.
All right, Desiree, there's a transition right over to you, if you wouldn't mind. What's going on?
Absolutely. So for our caregivers, we have a WellWorks challenge going on called What Matters to You. It lasts all through the month of June, and each week the caregivers have a set of challenges that are all different. Some being, I said thank you for trusting me with your care after I ended a call, or it's completing a unique bingo card that we created. We're hoping that we will get some selfies from our caregivers showing that they're wearing their badge on the Ask What Matters to You. We also have a unique coloring page that is broken up into 4 parts. It is a full heart that says ask, listen, do what matters to you. And we have it broken out in 4 sections. So we are hoping that we get enough back from our caregivers. That way we can put it together and we can see the different personalities come out in each one. In addition to that, we listen to our caregivers when we ask them what matters to you. We got a lot of feedback that their family is important, their children's important, having work-life balance is important for them. So the prizes that we integrated is we have a little heart that is blue, and you can plant it with your family or your kids, and it's going to blossom some flowers. I don't know what kind. We're hoping to get some pictures of them once we have some planted. We also have a little car cozy that you put in to absorb all the moisture from your drinks. We also have our stickers available. So just a lot of little different things that we did for our caregivers to spend some time and defuse from their hard work day.
Okay, very good. Reverend Stetter, you wanted to add?
Oh, yeah. My favorite one that I'm aiming for is tickets to soak in the hot springs up in Durango.
Hey.
So if you go through the whole What Matters to You celebration, you can be in a drawing for that, and I know there's going to be some competition for that. What a lovely thing for caregivers to be able to soak in a hot tub.
Right, no kidding. And I would say if the bingo card has a square for appearing on the radio, you both can mark that off today.
That's a good idea.
So there you go. So that would work very much. Now, for employees and patients, of course, this is an important thing. And I would think for recruitment, maybe this is something that could be used for recruiters at the hospital, that this is a program that has been invested in by the hospital, and it is ensconced at the hospital and being used for patients and employees. Is that something also that's part of this as well? Is it to use it as a recruitment tool?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that it can be used as a recruitment tool because if you think about it, we are putting so much work and so much money into listening. And whenever our patients tell us that this is going on in their lives, or a caregiver says, hey, how are you doing today? What matters to you today? It allows that personalized care that you don't get at many hospitals.
Right. Very, very interesting. Very cool. And Reverend Stetter, I know recruitment can be a challenge for any hospital these days. I think there's a lot of competition for these medical professionals that are coming out of school and what have you. And so to have this in the cap of San Juan Regional Medical Center can be an important thing to try to get folks here.
Correct. There's an international shortage of nurses still going on. It was aggravated by COVID, as we all know. It's not easy to get physicians to come to rural areas, and we're in competition with every retail place in town for people who might be on the front lines of delivering meal trays or whatever, or doing housekeeping. And I have to give them a shout out, because more than once a week, I have a food tray deliverer, somebody, a caregiver in our kitchen, a caregiver on our housekeeping staff, who come in and just by sweeping a room or delivering a meal tray, they see a patient that's struggling or a family that's struggling, and they're able to say to me, there's something going on there. Can you please go see what matters to them right now? And as we all know, what matters the day you come in may change depending on diagnoses and other things. So it's all hands on deck. And I really have to give our administration a very big shout out, because I've been doing this for a few decades. And quite honestly, this is the first time ever in any hospital, as a part of our goal setting and our evaluation process, that any leader has sat down and said to me, honestly, what matters to you, and listened to what my vision is for what spiritual care can be at the hospital, and then started putting support behind that. First time ever. That is huge. And boy, that wants me to stay for another 30 years.
Well,
and I know it's going to help nurses and doctors and all of our other caregivers want to stay as well. And it's not just in the hospital, it's out in the clinics too.
Right. This goes beyond the walls of the hospital, and that's an important thing to note. I also want to pick up on something that you said about that changing perspective during the day or during a patient stay. And Desiree, let me ask you about that, because again, as Reverend Stetter said, I think someone gets admitted into the hospital, and what matters to them is A, but then they get another complication or something else, and now what matters to them is B, C, and D, perhaps. Is that what happens sometimes?
Yes, that is absolutely something that does happen. When I was a patient experience representative, that department hits the patients as soon as they get to the ER, as soon as they are newly admitted on the floor. They follow up in 72 hours, and if there's extended time, they follow up again with that patient. And I think when the questions initially asked, it's, well, I want to not hurt, I want to feel a little bit better, and maybe I want to go home, I don't want to be admitted. But once they do get on that floor, that initial answer to that is completely different than the one they first gave, and that it continuous throughout their stay. And I know that if a follow-up call was to happen to the patient, and if that question was asked, it might be a different answer then. So it's what matters to you, it evolves throughout the stay of the patient and depends on what type of care they're receiving. So whenever that question's asked, it's always nice to see it on that whiteboard, like, hey, I have this statement right here, what matters to you during this stay. And there can be bullet points on, this is what I initially said, this is an addition, this is what my family thinks. So that what matters to you conversation is so critical to have.
Good to know. Linda Stetter? Yes.
Yeah, and so this also leads to some incredibly wonderful and fruitful interdisciplinary conversations. Most hospitals say they are interdisciplinary, but San Juan Regional truly is. And so I encounter doctors in the hall, I encounter patient experience people in the hall, I encounter other people. And yesterday I had a lovely conversation with one of our social workers. It was her Monday, and I had some serious information about a particular family in ICU. So I felt free to walk up to her and say, oh, and by the way, what matters to them is, and so she can walk in that door being fully up to speed. We're all on the same page without that family having to repeat things 5 times, and we can take good care of them from the get-go. So I see that what matters to you has expanded to being an incredibly good and beneficial to the patient interdisciplinary conversation starter.
Very good. And to get that into the fabric, I guess, of your employees and your patients too when they're coming to see you, that does take some time, I suppose, right? To have it that top of mind awareness for a new employee to be asking that question in their encounters during the day.
Yes, I think it does take a little bit of time, but I think that also resonates with their why. Why did they choose to be a caregiver? And once they know why they're there, why they chose to be a caregiver, the what matters to you question is almost second nature. You don't enter a room or start a conversation before you ask that critical question. So it does start with their why.
Very good. And you've both have been talking about a little bit about surveys and finding out from patients how they thought their stay went or what their feelings about their stays. And I think a lot of healthcare professionals and a lot of hospitals put a lot of weight on these surveys because they really want to know how that patient experience was, and if there was a problem or a concern, what can be done to change that. And that also seems to be a very important topic at the hospital and something that folks pay attention to at all levels of management and administration. Is that what you find?
That's true. There's one particular one called Press Ganey that measures things, and Desiree can help me with this, about the doctor really listened to me. The nurse really took time with me. Those real measures, those perceptions of, I feel safe, I feel welcome here, I feel a sense of hospitality, I feel cared for as a real human being. And so I am okay with staying until they're ready to let me go. Those are extremely important. I don't think people understand how much hospitals are surveyed, but how the patients feel about their visits is one of the ones we pay attention to most.
Sure. Desiree, what types of things do you learn from some of those responses from your patients?
Well, it's honest feedback that is completely anonymous unless they leave their name and information. It's feedback that is used for improvement. So like Linda mentioned, it's the doctors and nurses. It's also the caseworkers. It's also how maybe our billing department answered their phones. Like, hi, my name is Desiree. I'm with San Juan Regional. How can I help you? Another big part of it is the discharge planning. Was their considerations taken? Did they have follow-up care planned? So it's very specific questions all around their care, and it's strictly on one encounter. It's not a mix of encounters for the patient. So I think that does help us measure where we're at and where we can get, because there's always improvement in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Stetter?
Well, like Desiree said, we're always really engaged in improvement. And because we're asking what matters, and because we have those interdisciplinary conversations about what matters, if there is something that wasn't addressed, or sometimes we see something that maybe the patient never even saw that might not have been addressed, but it's important to us because it could matter. And so we lift those up to our process improvement teams much quicker. We don't just sit around waiting a month or two to get a patient complaint coming in after the fact. We take care of concerns in real time, and what matters to you helps us understand, even if the patient never catches it, what might have mattered to that patient that we could have anticipated. We have a value at San Juan Regional called thoughtful anticipation, and so we're always thinking ahead of what might this person need, what might make their experience better, what might help the family, and leading our process improvement in that direction.
Gotcha. And I want to ask both of you, too, when it comes to the patient experience, right? It's got to be somewhat of a challenge, because if I'm not feeling well, maybe I can't really think about what could make my patient experience better because I just feel, not very, very well. And that seems to be a pretty high hill to climb to try to get that patient to tell you what would make them feel better or what matters to them or what's going on. Is that an ongoing challenge, I guess, in some of these cases, Desiree?
So when you walk into the patient's room, you kind of got to read the room. I always like the saying that if you walk in, sit eye level. That offers the dignity back to the patient, and see if they're willing to talk with you, and let them know that it's okay. You understand that they're hurting or they don't feel well, but offering your name, a good number to call, and let them know that you're there for them really makes a difference, because they feel seen, they feel trusted with your care that you're offering, and they're more willing to open up if they know that you are being sincere whenever you're asking those questions.
Gotcha. That makes sense, and it goes back to that bedside manner, I suppose, right? For those healthcare workers and things like that. Reverend Stetter, same question to you.
Exactly, and sometimes it's the little things that are aggravating the patient at that time. And so as a spiritual caregiver, I don't just run in the room and say, hey, I'm spiritual care, I'm here to pray with you. I do what Desiree says. I read the room, and especially the face and the body language of the patient. I can tell if they're cold. I can tell if they're really warm and flushed. I can tell if they're not comfortable. And so I start with those little things about, oh my goodness, are you warm enough? No, my feet are really cold. So I go get a warm blanket and make a burrito of a warm blanket out of their feet. And I say, is that better? And then I just start asking the what else questions. And pretty soon they're having a full conversation about the bigger things beyond the foot being cold, or could you bring me a cold washcloth for my face that feels warm, or I've slid down in my bed, they're all scrunched down. And I say, could I just please get the nurse to reposition you to a more comfortable? Do you need a pillow under that arm with the IV? So you read the room, and when you start with the small touches and loving care and compassionate stuff, then the big things follow.
Gotcha. And that's important, I guess, for everyone to remember when they're interacting with your patients, to try to read that room and figure out what they need at that particular moment during their stay and for their care. Very good. What's next? This is a full month of celebration, I guess, at the hospital. Desiree, what else do you have planned for this month? Have you covered it?
So I have a lot of things moving into place. Part of my job is I have medical students and APP students, which are nurses becoming nurse practitioners or physician assistants. We have a lot of students rotating through, which is very exciting. And I'm able to make some partnerships with a couple of universities around the area. That way we always have an open door to any advanced medical professional wanting to get a little clinical experience.
Very good. Nice. Well, that sounds like a busy month for you.
Oh, yeah.
Of happening. And Reverend Stetter, what about for you?
Well, I have some big projects going. I can tell you, just as a headline news thing, that we have applied for a nationally accredited chaplain training program. We're hoping that application will be ratified this fall, and so we'll be able to train people in spiritual care. And it's exciting that we have things like What Matters to You, because when we've trained them, they're going to be a class act for any hospital. They are going to have skills and training that they're certainly not going to find in any other rural hospital, and they're going to be very attractive to the bigger hospitals because they will be trained a level beyond what's normal. So we're very excited about the opportunity of doing that.
Interesting.
So more later this fall. Keep your fingers
Stay tuned,
crossed.
as we say. Stay tuned, as we say in
the
radio
big national
business.
guys are looking at our application now. So.
And those big national guys, is that an accreditation authority, or who did you apply to, I guess is my next question for that.
Yes, thank you, Scott. There is one organization in the United States that officially trains chaplains to be accredited to work in hospitals. It's the Association for Pastoral Clinical Education. It's affiliated with the U.S. Department of Education. So there are many quality checks, there are many outcomes, there are many things you have to do in order to prove to them that you have everything that you need and that you're fully capable of sustaining a program of training competent chaplains. And what's exciting is that there are no such programs in rural hospitals right now, and they are excited that we want to step up to the plate and give it a try. So I can't say it's a done deal. I can't
Okay.
advertise it yet.
No, but I bet when it is, you'll come back.
Yeah, I absolutely will. It's a preview of coming events. And of course, the more people we have finding out what matters to patients, the more visits we can make up and back up the visits that patient experience makes, the better care we're going to be able to give to our patients and families and to our other caregivers.
Right. Very true. Very true. Well, thank you both for coming in and talking with me this morning. Reverend Linda Stetter, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for being here very much. Also, Desiree Kenneth, thank you for coming in and sharing all your work with patients at San Juan Regional and the What Matters to You program. Thank you both.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You're very welcome. My guest this morning right here with me,